Welcome to the Expert Series from Selling Your Canadian Business. Our book lays out the expert team of advisors every Canadian business owner needs in their corner. This series brings those experts into the conversation, one at a time. Disclaimer: this series is for educational purposes only and is not professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals. Find our book and more resources at sellingyourcanadianbusiness.ca. Here is your host.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Prowse from the Shaughnessy Group, and this is the Expert Interview Series. This is our opportunity to interview the experts in industry who help business owners grow and eventually exit their business. My guest today is Franne McNeal. Franne is the president of Significant Business Results, and she helps architecture, engineering, and construction firm owners transform founder-dependent businesses into scalable, high-value enterprises. She solves the problems of low margins, inconsistent revenue, and pressure to lower prices by helping our clients create a business that runs without them. Based on a proven 8-pillar framework to increase the value of a business, she empowers owners to move from being an indispensable operator to intentional builders of enduring businesses. Franne McNeal, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Excited to be here and look forward to having a conversation with your audience and you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So Franne, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into helping business owners prepare for an exit. I know you were involved with entrepreneurial education in the past, so tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. So again, I'm Franne McNeal, president of Significant Business Results. And the reason that I work with architects, engineers, and construction business owners to help them grow, scale, and sell their businesses is because I've spent the last 20 plus years in the entrepreneurial education space. I've worked extensively with the Kaufman Fast Track materials. So they're based out of Kansas City. And in 2009, I had an opportunity to be one of 3 facilitators when Mayor Bloomberg kicked off an initiative of free entrepreneurial training for all of New York City residents. And I actually still continue to support that group online. And then while in New York, in 2012, so again, this is years ago, I had the opportunity to do some work with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program with the New York group out of LaGuardia Community College. And there I was a faculty member, and I worked with business owners on the topic of leadership, of managing your teams, and also financial statement workshop awareness. And then in 2013, Mayor Nutter, who was the mayor then of Philadelphia, brought the Goldman Sachs program to the city of Philadelphia at Community College of Philadelphia. So for 11 years, I worked with myself and the team, worked with 886 small business owners who generated 15,000 jobs and nearly 11 billion in revenue. So that is a track record that not many can speak to. And it certainly puts me in the category of having deep understanding. The program was a 100-hour program. There were approximately 25 people per cohort. We worked with 32 cohorts. And I really had an opportunity in different roles to get to listen to business owners, watch business owners interact with other business owners, and to coach and help them grow their businesses. So I love doing this. I've had experience doing it with the best. And when the grant ended, I had an opportunity to think about which industry, since I worked with so many industries, I would focus on. And in Philadelphia and many cities in northeast of the United States, there is a lot of renovation and rehabilitation, reuse, reinvention of spaces. So the architect, engineer, and construction industry was one that intrigued me, and it was one where folks were beginning, because private equity was entering the space, to get ridiculous offers, and folks were beginning to think, oh, should I exit? And when they went to ask their accountants, how much would I get? they were getting these very depressing answers. And so I often work with accountants and bankers and business brokers and M&A lawyers who send me disappointed and often angry um, clients
Yeah,
who then work with me so that they can do what I call the pre-sale preparation,
right.
so that their business over time is really focused on value. And that business owner understands how an outsider is looking at the inside of their business.
Excellent.
So the short version is I've had many years in the entrepreneurial training space. It's what I continue to do, and I rephrase it more as education and accountability to help
Yeah.
business owners really be prepared for the next level.
Yeah. So following up on that, I mean, what does that mean in terms of context of preparing for a business sale? Education and accountability.
Well, it really, there are many frameworks. There are folks that are specifically exit advisors or exit planners, and they focus on often the true valuation side. I really focus in three areas. One is on the mindset. Where is the business owner now? Typically, they're anywhere from 45% to 95% in the business. Their
Hmm.
business is effectively um, maybe a low-paying job or a well-paying job, but the business is highly dependent on them.
Yeah.
And so to really begin to help them understand why that is a liability, if we talk in financial terms, and if they want their business to be an asset, again, speaking in financial terms, they need to have the business operate without them, which means they need to get out. And often that's kind of scary, but this is my baby. Even if their baby is 20 million in revenue, they need to step out. So then mindset is a big piece. And again, I'm not a woo-woo business coach. Mindset is directly tied to value. If you don't understand the mindset of the buyer, it's difficult for you to then think about repositioning and understand the why for repositioning your mindset. The second area is really business fundamentals. And again, whether the business is 1 million or 20 million, often people fall into the groove of this is the way we've done it, this is the way we do it. I hired so and so and they suggested XYZ. The business owner, the CEO, the founder, the leadership team should be focused on the strategy. And so, what is the strategy related to building a business that focuses on value? And there I use a framework that really looks at 8 key drivers of company value. So there's an education piece around what are those 8 criteria. If you think about a pizza, often it's sliced into 8 slices. If you think about a wheel, it often has 8 spokes.
Hmm.
Or you could think about an 8 pillar structure. So in
Yeah.
architecture, that's not common, I recognize, but we'll go with it still. So, and then the third piece, so we've got mindset, we've got education. The third piece is accountability.
Right.
So all thought, all talk doesn't produce action. So I meet with folks on a regular basis. Usually it's bi-weekly, and we are constantly looking at 2 or 3 of those 8 drivers in
Hmm.
relation to what's going on in the business, what's working well, what's not working well, what are the roadblocks, what's the strategy to do it, who's being held accountable, what are the results, is the needle moving? Because again, this is not therapy. I'm not good at that. I'm not a life coach. That's not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
I'm not a therapist. People get a degree for that, and there's certain liabilities attached to that.
Sure.
I am a business advisor helping you get from point A to point B. And typically, when I work with businesses, we can actually move the external valuation up to 71%. And again, I'm not the business broker, but I'm
Yeah.
getting people ready to work with the sales team if they choose to sell.
Yeah. And I know the accountability piece is really important because it's one thing to come up with a plan. It's another thing to say, well, who's going to execute it? And it shouldn't all be just the business owner either. Like the business owner has to delegate some of those responsibilities off. and that may include also building up the team or figuring out who's going to do what, and then having that periodic accountability, I think is really important. And whatever the cadence may be, like some places to do every 90 days, other places it's, you're right, every week or every, biweekly, you have some sort of follow up. But I think having that process is so important to be able to, get some traction and actually accomplish something.
Absolutely. It is about traction. And while I don't use the EOS system that Gino Wickman recommends in his
Yeah.
book Traction, and I don't explicitly use what Michael Bergerber recommends in the E-Myth, it really is about helping people work on their business versus in the business. And in fact, if the action plan contains more than 40%, this is what the owner needs to do, there's a flaw. So, at least 90% of what the owner needs to be doing is delegating. And in that delegation, then you'll find that certain individuals or leadership team members or second or third level team members are then held accountable for getting stuff done.
Yeah. Now, I know you use the value builder system. You mentioned that,
Mhm.
and they have some personal
Yes.
readiness assessments in there.
Mhm.
Just talk about, how those assessments are important, and a lot of times they're probably very revealing to business owners.
Absolutely. In my process, and again, I think coming from working with so many business owners that originally didn't have to pay for their business education because it was paid for by a grant, I really understand the value of helping people know where they are. So, one assessment that I provide for folks, and it takes about 2 minutes and it's certainly free, is called the Freedom Point Assessment.
Hmm.
And it helps them, although I'm not a wealth planner, it helps them identify what is that number that if they weren't to have a business, if they weren't to have a salary, if they weren't to have a draw, that they then for the rest of their life could live comfortably at the level that they deem is appropriate. Again, assuming that they're not in their business.
Yeah.
A second assessment, so that falls in that mental mindset category. A second
Yeah.
assessment is that personal readiness score. We call it the pre-score, but it really is personal readiness to exit.
Yeah.
And it takes about 2 or 3 minutes. And again, it asks, you know, to what degree, imagine yourself, you've sold your business, it's the next day. What will you be doing? Do you have a life outside your business?
Yeah.
Is your identity wholly tied up in your business that when you went to the golf course or your grandchildren's event and someone said, "Oh, Charlie, Bob, Lanisha, Frank, Sally, what do?" You wouldn't go, I used to own a business,
Yeah.
and feel lost. You would happily say, I've sold my business. I can't share what the amount was, but I'm happily engaged in doing ABC.
Yeah.
And it might include a combination of personal things.
Sure.
And then the final assessment, which takes about 13 minutes, is the value builder score. So
Hmm.
40 questions that look at those 8 key drivers and allow a business owner before they do an engagement with me. I often do this in workshops, whether there's 20 people or
Yeah.
500 people in the conference, and have people take this assessment. It's 40 questions, and it instantly gives them a feedback
Yeah.
based on their industry, their NAICS code. So we do use the North American classification
Yes.
system, even though that includes Canada.
Yeah.
And it allows them to get important information. So I'm a big believer, folks need to understand the why. Do I need to make a change? And
Hmm.
they're using their own data, which may be a little bit biased, but they're
Yeah.
using their own data to begin to get an objective assessment of where they are. And then once they see that, then we have a conversation. Where do you want to be? What about that looks, like, did you know? What about that is surprising? If your score is 40 out of 100, it means you're in the red zone. You got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But, what is that work? If your score is 60 out of 100, you have work in specific areas. and what might be some of the roadblocks. So again, I have a more consultative, relationship, supportive. Some people call me I use the velvet hammer. So,
Yeah.
inside is a lot of strength. That accountability is serious. I'm the oldest of four girls. I know how to tell people what to do. I'm
Yeah.
used to being ignored, and I'm used to coming right back. So, and I think it's important to create a space where folks can be honest, and reflect about what's not working, and what's getting in the way, and be able to discuss and brainstorm and then take action around how do I get to where I need to go. And sometimes that will involve difficult conversations. I
Sure.
had lunch with someone recently that said, I've had to fire two VPs who were originally with me when I founded the organization. And it was difficult. And, it took them about 18 months. To me, that was 16 months too long. But,
Yeah.
they really struggled mentally with it. But in that 18 months, those folks weren't doing their job. They were at a level where they were accountable for business development as well as performance of others. And the numbers were showing that those folks weren't willing to change, and it was hurting the future trajectory of the business.
Yeah. Now, many business owners, I've done lots of valuations, and they think their business is worth a lot more than what it is at a given time because it's a sort of aspirational valuation in their mind. Why does that gap exist? And then, how do you help owners kind of close that gap?
Sure. I think that aspirational, and if we stick with the first two letters and maybe add an S to it, so I won't say it out loud,
Yeah.
but it is, folks dream. Folks hear about, well, so and so sold their business for X. And they don't know what the top line revenue or the margins were. They don't know whether that person had solid operational systems in place that were documented. They don't know if that person had recurring revenue contracts. They don't know how long this person had been preparing. And they also don't know, even though the industry might have a current, ratio of EBITDA or this, like they hear stuff that they don't know. And so they begin to think, they dream, they aspire
Mhm.
that, well, what I'd like my business to sell for is 20 million, because for the last 5 years I've been generating 10 million, and next year we're really, statistically poised to forecast to be at 13 million. So I'm
Yeah.
showing growth potential. And so therefore, I think I should be able to get the 20 million. So the I think I should is where I ask people again, let's do these three assessments. It's less than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
In the value builder assessment, if they provide three pieces of information, I can do a sort of back of the napkin
Sure.
valuation. And they're often surprised at, why is that number not, 20 million? Why is that
Yeah.
number not 10 million?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at what you're taking out of the business currently. Let's look at, these different elements.
Yeah.
And so often that number matches what their accountant has already shared with them.
Yeah.
So one, people are aspiring, dreaming, using information that they don't really know about, and terms, sort of a whole context that they don't have. Second, they haven't done the work of looking at their business, using something like eight criteria from the outsider's perspective. And then third, they haven't really listened to, from a valuation standpoint, if they had a conversation with their accountant and said, well, where do I need to be with my balance sheet, with my cash flow, with my profitability statement, with my strategic planning? What conversations do we need to be having so that in 1 year I could sell at 20 million and the account will say, there's nothing you can do. In 3 years, there's still nothing you can do. But in 3 years, if you did XYZ, you might be at 5 million or 7 million. So
Yeah.
I'm the one that continues that conversation. So I think, again, to summarize, people have these big, hairy, audacious goals
Yes.
around what their valuation will be, in essence, based on ignorance. They don't
Yeah.
know what they don't know.
Yes.
They're dreaming, and I don't know if they're smoking something. That would be a personal behavior that I don't know
Yeah.
about. But
Yeah.
they just don't know. And part of, again, given the fact that I've worked with so many business owners over such a long time, that I've been asked to provide, be the key speaker on succession planning, not from an HR standpoint or an operational standpoint or exclusively a financial standpoint, but on the holistic value
Yeah.
standpoint, then I know that ultimately, a business is sold at what a buyer will pay for. And so understanding the buyer's perspective is critical. And that's a different way of running your business. Many business owners run their business day to day. Do we have enough to meet payroll? And then you get to a point, do we have the clients, at least 20% of the clients that we love to have? Do we have 50% of the clients that we love to have? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, now we have the clients we love to have. Are those clients profitable? Are those clients the ones that we prefer to work with? Do those clients pay on time?
Yeah.
Are those clients aligned with our purpose? So when you start applying what I call the 5 Ps to that
Yeah.
whole process of evaluating your client mix, your employee mix, it then again begins to provide sort of these forces that lead you to running a business that's valuable. And it's one that employees can see and feel the difference because there are frameworks in place, there are procedures in place.
Yeah.
The leadership team can see, and people can begin to feel comfortable with you stepping back. And in fact, may as you step back, say, okay, back a little bit further, back a little bit further, because we've got this. And you're like, you know what? The business didn't fall apart.
Yeah.
And many people observe that the business is doing better. So that's a little bit, the ego's got to kind of adjust to it.
Yeah.
And imagine what you now can do with your time. So value and valuation, I think, has both a personal, intrinsic definition as well as that financial definition.
Yes.
So I'll stop there. Mhm.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned about the buyer's perspective. I mean, that's just so important because business owners are so entrenched in running the business, and it's when you start a business, I mean, you created it, you're intrinsically linked to it. And then, at some point you got to say, well, now you're not going to be linked to it. You need to sell it and you need to untether yourself from it. And it's a very difficult process. So I know during the exit planning process, that mental part of getting them to think about their business from a buyer's perspective is incredibly important.
Right. And I do want to interject that even in the beginning of people creating that business plan, and many people never finish the plan, which is one of the reasons I like the business model canvas,
Yeah.
because it's 9 questions and it's somewhat visual. And I say to folks, just answer 2 questions in each of those boxes. But the goal when you're putting together a business plan, even though you're passionate about your idea, or you're doing that 5 year strategic plan or that 10 year or 30 year strategic plan, or strategic plan at the 30 year point, is that I often used to say to business owners at the very beginning, and I still say it now, if you're running a business and it's all about you, that's a problem because you're not the one that buys your business products and services. The start of your business may be inspired by something that you hated, something that you loved, something that you wanted more about in terms of the product or services, but
Yeah.
you're not the buyer. So you need to get out of your own head and into the head of your ideal customer. So again, it doesn't mean that you're crazy, but when you get into the head of another of your ideal customer, that's critical. And so that matters in the beginning, that
Yeah.
matters as you're running the business, and that matters when you're exiting the business, because in this case, your ideal client is your ideal buyer.
Right.
And if you understand what's in their head, that then helps you be better in sync with being an ideal, acquirer. Like they're
Yeah.
like, I want you. And one thing to remember is the buyers aren't coming in this with the rose-colored glasses of, well, you invested 30 years and you started out in your basement or your cellar or the shed that you built by hand, using concrete mix that you customize. No, no, no. They're going, this is either a financial buy or strategic buy. I've done this before. I know what my margins will be, and
Yeah.
ultimately I'm going to pay one price. So if I really feel that this business has a valuation of $10 million,
Yeah.
but I need to put in once the owner goes away, and the leadership team stays and the employees stay and the ideal clients stay, I need to put in another 2 million. They're
Hmm.
essentially going to pay 12 million for the business.
Yeah.
But depending on how the business is structured and how well prepared the owner is, they might give a $6 million check to the owner and hold 6 million to develop the business. So again,
Yeah.
when your accountant says you're going to only get 2 million or 6 million, they're understanding the whole picture from the buyer's perspective.
Yeah.
So, investing your time in preparation allows you to get more of that check that they're ultimately going to dedicate towards the acquisition of a business,
Yeah.
ideally yours.
Right. Now you do work with a lot of architecture, engineering, construction firms, which are notorious for having personal goodwill. That's what I like to call it. Where the technical expertise is and the relationships are all sitting with the owner. So when you're going to work with somebody in those firms and dealing with that particular issue, how do you help them kind of separate themselves from the business a little bit?
Sure. So one is I do use a series of corny jokes. So I'm like, imagine you're in the car. And this is not political, but if it's a Tesla, it's a self-driving car, so you can take your hands off the wheel. But ultimately, you want a self-driving business. So I need for you to take your hands off the wheel. So let's just practice. If you take your hands off the wheel of your business, what's the one thing that you personally feel like this is my baby and why? So I want to understand that.
Hmm.
And then almost like a little child with their favorite teddy bear, it's like, okay, so for 1 hour, when we go to the playground, so you do something that you like, when you're on the swing and you're on the seesaw, I have to hold the teddy bear.
Yeah.
So again, with the business owner, and most of them have children or nieces or nephews, they're like, "Oh, am I that person?" I'm like, "Yeah." Okay, can we agree you're that person? Okay,
Yeah.
so again, some of it is helping folks understand where are they holding on to. So for the business, I mean, there's a lot of pride in I know every single customer by our best customers by name. They always ask for me. I'm always involved in the deal. But what that means is that when you step away, maybe they're not willing to work with someone else because they don't view them as equal. So, I'm fine with you going to the golf game, going to the concert, going to the gala with this person, but someone in your leadership team needs to be the one that is doing the golf course thing or whatever. So I
Right.
think that's a big part of it. I mean, tactically and practically, it's about having those honest conversations and kind of doing the research because every business owner, sort of what they're holding on to is different. So I can't assume it's X. I
Hmm.
need to understand their story. So when we begin to work together, I learn a lot about, what was that journey? Where are they emotionally attached? And where does that emotional attachment connect to the dollars that come into the business? Sometimes they're holding on to a very important relationship, but because we were friends in college and, that person, their business grew from 10 million to now they're the CEO of whatever, there actually is a discomfort in saying, hey, Joe, you've got these big contracts, we should get them. Whereas if you're someone on your senior leadership team was, to have a conversation with someone on their leadership team, they would be like, you know what? you do X, Y, and Z. So, you're a real estate developer. You also have heavy ties in with these engineers and these construction folks. I've noticed over the last 3 years, here are the deals that you've been involved in. You've
Yeah.
used architect firms A, B, and C. And we need to be a part of that. Did you know what we provide? Do you know how we can help you? Do you know how our clients have valued that sort of secret sauce? And
Mhm.
so sometimes, again, the owners don't have the business conversations. They're just holding on to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we all know business owners who have gotten contacted from a strategic buyer. Private equity keeps moving down, does a lot of direct contact. And it's obviously very tempting for a business owner to just engage in those conversations, and maybe some cases, it ends up being a deal. Why what are your thoughts on that? And how should business owners, if they've been kind of unsolicited contact from somebody else who's interested in buying them, how should maybe they approach that?
Okay. Well, one is to, it's sort of not that I'm an FBI, but consider the source. So, I was in high school in the 70s, so I am dating myself. But the
Hmm.
fact of the matter is, there were folks that would be like, "Psst, psst, 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 I've got some jewelry to sell," or oh, over in the back of my trunk, I've got some, bootleg CDs or, songs. And again, consider the source. If someone is doing the psst, 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 I can offer you a great deal for your business. I think it's fine to listen, but it really is pretty close to spam, and it could be close to a scam. So you need to say, okay, so thank you. Put that in an email to me. Identify yourself, your website. I mean, often they're coming from blah, blah, blah at gmail.com. Like, who is that? It could
Yeah.
be an AI, agent, robot,
Sure.
like, so one, just to have, like, when I get unsolicited phone calls, I'm like, hello, okay, may I speak to Fran McNeal? My first question is, who is this? So
Yeah.
often there's a pause because the AI bot is like, oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it's someone that doesn't know how to pronounce my name correctly. So, so who is this? Where are you from? How did you get my information? What is it that you want? Then put it in an email. I'd be happy to review your information. I'm busy right now.
Yeah.
Then let's say they do send you to a website. Hey, we buy architecture firms. Okay, that's kind of like those little signs on the telephone pole that say, we buy houses. So if
Mhm.
someone is randomly soliciting, do you think that they're going to pay a high price and consider value? No, they're looking at volume. They're going to want to buy. I mean, their business model has got to be, let me call as many people as possible, let me buy as low as possible, and then let me figure out a way to flip this or get the maximum money. So
Mhm.
their interests from a negotiation standpoint don't align with your interests. So again, the first few, I think, just to sort of build up your research
Yeah.
muscle, ask some questions, and then share that with your accountant and say, hey, this firm, and you actually have a firm now on a website, this
Hmm.
person, you actually have a title. And usually just those two things, the people disappear. Like they don't want to
Yeah.
reveal themselves.
Yeah.
But they've made me an offer. And then again, if someone makes you an offer, say, well, share with me how you came up with that offer. Because again, they probably haven't asked you a whole bunch of questions. They've just made an offer. What? Based on looking at your tax records? Probably not.
Yeah.
Like they've just made a general offer. So as you begin to sort of peel back the onion, and again, I'm talking about the 5 to 20 minute worth for the first 3 to 5 kind of rando,
Yeah.
call, email that you get. But then what it allows you to do, I think, to have a more meaningful conversation with your accountant, because then you can say, you know, what is my business worth? And your accountant, and probably you haven't been listening because you've been focused on, how big of a draw can I get? How can I increase my salary? How can I run more expenses through the business? All of which are decreasing the value of the business in many ways. Because if
Yeah.
you're paying yourself a comparable salary to what you would pay a CEO who was running your business, there might be a big gap. If you're writing off your club expenses and your trip to Tahiti, you wouldn't allow somebody else to do that. So there may be a number of things that your accountant has been sharing with you, this is not good for your business, but you're like, oh, hey, this is what I want to do. But now you can have a conversation based on, from the accountant's perspective, knowing your industry, what are some, ABCs, what are some fundamental first steps? And
Yeah.
often they will say, in terms of implementing and acting on these things, I'd love for you to work with Fran
Yeah.
because she can now help you work on those fundamentals. So in some ways, your accountant is your specialty. And not that I'm great at football, although I was a football manager in college
Yeah.
for 2 years. Your accountant is your financial specialty coach,
Yeah.
but I am the specialty coach on the tactical, the drop, the kick, the throw, so that you have your form and function set up so that, again, when you're out on the field, when the crowd is looking at you, they can say, wow, they've got these statistics. They've got, looking at our criteria for measuring the most valuable player. Hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they've got it.
Yeah.
That's what I help people do. And it's tough to do it on your own. I don't know too many surgeons that operate on themselves. I don't
Right.
know too many dentists that, pull out their own cavities. And the old joke is there aren't too many shoemakers that make their own shoes.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's tough working on it on your own. And again, you have pride in being a great architect. You have pride in being a great engineer. You've built your business from, a one-person firm to a 30-person firm. You have, built that plumbing business or wall hanging business
Yeah.
or a painting business or general contracting business. But now imagine if that business, even though it might not have your name on it now, so it might be ABC, whatever,
Mhm.
if it truly could operate without itself and it was a valuable business that if, and it probably wouldn't be placed on the stock exchange, but if it were placed in as an external entity
Right. Yeah.
on some kind of measuring board, that it would stand out as a most valuable business.
For sure. So one final question. So lots of business owners watching today. What would your advice to be to them? What can they do in the next 90 days to start improving their chances for a successful business on their own terms?
Okay, one is make the commitment that you're willing to do the work, to talk with the trusted advisors that you already have and may need to get you to the next step. So you've got to make a commitment to set a goal that I want to improve my business. I want my business to be more valuable. I want to be able to sell it at that aspirational price.
Yeah.
Who do I need to talk to, listen to, work with in order to get that done? So it starts with you. If you don't make that commitment, the rest doesn't happen. So I don't work with people that aren't committed.
Yeah.
Second is to actually start doing the research. So when people say this is what you should do, talk with folks that have sold their business in your industry.
Yeah.
Ask them, how did it go? What worked well? What are the lessons learned? And I bet you they'll say, I wish I had listened to my accountant. I wish I had had someone who had helped me get ready 1 to 2 to 3 years before I sold it. I wish I had done some things. And then the third, and this is not self-interest. This is all about you and your listeners. They
Yeah.
need to contact me because what I will do is offer them some complimentary assessments that again allow them to get out of their head and look at and think about questions that they might not have thought about, and look at their own responses, and then have a conversation and say, so what does this mean? What different conversations will you have with your accountant, your lawyer, your insurance, your person, your business broker,
Right.
your wealth manager? So that think about it, get into your own head and think about sort of where you are. Do some research and get back to your trusted advisors that you already know
Yeah.
and some of the ones that you need to know. And then contact me. Contact me and take some of the free assessments and have a conversation so we can explore where you are. I am. I hold people accountable. So, but my goal is to help make people dangerous. My goal is to give you your life back,
Yeah.
and to give you a degree of flexibility and pride in being a business owner and a former business owner, as opposed to someone whose business is a full-time job, or their business is running them, or their business is awfully busy, but not necessarily financially productive.
Yeah. Franne McNeal, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very enlightening. I love this conversation. I think it's been very helpful to business owners out there. And thank you for joining us, our audience. Appreciate it for joining us. And hopefully this has been very illuminating for everybody in the audience today. So we'll catch you on the next episode of the Expert Interview Series. You can get information on how to contact Franne on our website. So thanks very much again, Franne, for joining us. We'll catch you the next time
Yeah,
on the next episode. Have a great day. Thank you.
great. Thank you.
That concludes this episode of the Expert Series from Selling Your Canadian Business. This conversation is for educational purposes only and is not professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals. Click on any of the additional resources on screen or visit sellingyourcanadianbusiness.ca. Thank you for joining us.